services providers. Today we're speaking with Wendy Couples and Emma Scullion from Carers Queensland about the NDIS. Hi, thank you for joining us. And combined, they've got over 25 years of experience in family support services, working with people with disabilities in families and also community development. We're also going to be chatting with Tracy Lincoln, who is a recent graduate from the Diploma of Leisure and Health, about her NDIS employment journey. And as this is a conversation, we encourage participation. So what you'll find on the right-hand side is a little screen. Please write all your questions in the side box there, and Sky Mylan, our marketing coordinator, will lead the question answer discussion at the end of the session, along with Wendy, Emma and Tracy. Now, this webinar is recorded, and if you're registered, you'll receive a link in a few days of the recording, so you don't need to take any notes. And if you're interested in any other previous conversations, please look at our Facebook page. We'll give you a link at the end. Now, before we start, I just would like to welcome Pauline Allardyce, one of our community and counselling trainers and a proud Aboriginal woman who will be doing the Welcome to Country. Thanks, Pauline.
Thank you, Wendy. Before we begin tonight, on behalf of Australis College, I'd like to acknowledge the Turrbal people and the Yagara people, who are the traditional custodians of this land on which we are gathering here tonight. I would like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging, for which they hold dreams, traditions and cultures of Aboriginal Australia. Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. Well, welcome, Wendy and Emma, and thanks for joining us today.
Hi.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about Carers Queensland?
Okay, well, Carers Queensland was started by a group of parents who had children with disability, and they wanted a bit of a collective to support each other. And that was back in 1988, 89, and it's been going ever since. So Carers Queensland, the core business of Carers Queensland is to provide support and information to carers. It doesn't matter who you're caring for. If you're providing additional support to somebody that needs it, you're classed as a carer, and Carers Queensland will help with whatever is going on for you. And then more recently, Carers Queensland have taken on the role of being the partner in the community for the NDIS and the LACs for the NDIS. So we saw that it sat very well with our core business, in that by providing a good service of the NDIS, we can ensure that carers are also getting the benefits of those NDIS plans.
And so what is the NDIS?
So the NDIS stands for National Disability Insurance Scheme. So with that, the national is the NDIS has been introduced across all states and territories of Australia. And the NDIS provides support to eligible people with intellectual, physical and sensory, cognitive and psychosocial disability. And early intervention can also be provided, but that's with eligible people with disability or children with developmental delay. And the insurance, a lot of people think it sounds like house insurance, car insurance that they have to pay, whereas actually the NDIS gives all Australians a peace of mind. And the child and loved one is born. Okay,
so if a child is born with a disability or a person acquires a disability, they are now covered by the NDIS, the insurance part, for whatever is required for them to have an ordinary life if that disability is significant and permanent.
Yeah.
Right. So what are the benefits, though, for everybody with the NDIS? What are the benefits for the person and the carer?
I guess the benefits of the NDIS is that previously people used to have what they call block funded. So people would be allocated certain hours a week that they'd be told that the support worker would come in and look after them. Whereas with the NDIS, it's actually it moves away from that previous system. And it's direct funding for individuals. Everyone's treated like individually. Choice and control, whereas they might not have had that before. Yeah.
So essentially they're given access to funds and they're able to spend it on what they want to spend it on.
Yes, they've got choice and control. Previously, each state would fund their disability requirements, and if you were eligible, you were given a block of funding that was then handed to a particular service who pretty much told you what you needed, when you needed, and how you needed it. But now with the NDIS, the person with the disability, or if they don't have capacity, then the person that provides support and care for them, can make the choice of what it is they want, when they want it, and how they want it.
If you want to go on a holiday, or if you need like personal care at home, that's all covered?
Yes, if you want to go on a holiday, the NDIS will fund the support that you require whilst on that holiday. Of course, it won't pay for the cost of the holiday because every Australian has to pay for their own, but it certainly will provide the supports or equipment that they need to be able to actually have that holiday.
Oh, great. That's really good. So it's giving people quality of life and control, essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And now there was a rollout across Australia. Has that finished, or what's happening there?
Okay, so we're in the final stages of the rollout. The rollout is expected to be completed, was expected to be completed July last year. This year is the marker, July 2019, should see the final rollout. Now, I guess you've got to remember, in Australia, there's about 4.3 million people that have disability, but the scheme is only expected to have 460,000 participants on it at full rollout. So it is only for people who have a permanent and significant disability.
Okay, so that was going to be one of my questions. Like how are you eligible for NDIS, or what's the criteria? Who decides?
Yeah, so to be eligible for NDIS, they have to be under the age of 65. They have to have a permanent lifelong disability and be an Australian citizen or hold a permanent or protected special category visa to be eligible onto the system. Yeah.
Okay.
They must have a disability that significantly impacts daily life.
Right. So someone, I guess, if they're unable to actually do things around the home, is there a level of cover that they're given, or so somebody who's completely unable to, they might be a quadriplegic versus someone who has MS and can do a little bit. Is there a difference in level of funding?
Well, there's actually 460,000 different plans.
Wow.
So every plan is individual to the person and their needs. There is no set amount. There is no, because you might have somebody with Down syndrome who can dress themselves and someone with Down syndrome who can't dress themselves. Those two people will have significantly different plans.
Oh, that's fantastic. So so you're not putting, everybody with Down syndrome in the one box.
No. And it was like when you said, sorry, you go.
No, keep going.
No, I was just saying everyone is treated individually. So as they come into the office, their needs might be different from the person that's just left. So every plan is very different to the other person who might have Down syndrome, like Wendy mentioned. Yeah.
And who decides how much they get or about their plan? Whose decision is that?
We actually sit with them and do their plan with them. So we highlight what the goals are, and we build their plan, and we help to generate. Well, NDIA used to make the decisions, but now what we do is we build on their goals and we help to generate the money as to where it can go and help them in their plan for when they get it through.
But the final decision is still made by the NDIA. So the government agency, the National Disability Insurance Agency, are the ones that control the funding. So we will sit with somebody and we will hear their story, we'll look at what their needs are, what their goals are, what things do they really want to achieve, and then we'll put together and what we call build a plan for them, and we put dollar amounts to it, being governed by the NDIS price guide, which is available on the main website for anybody to grab hold of. So we look at what it is they need, how much they need of it, and we align it to the price guide to come up with the figures. And then if we can justify it as reasonable and necessary for this person to live an ordinary life, then it's pretty sure we'll get it passed by the NDIA.
Right. And then who looks after the plan after that? Does Carers Queensland continue to look after it, or you have case managers? Who looks after it?
And there's a couple of options. So one of the options is that you can do self-manage. So with self-managers, you actually look after the plan yourself. And with that, it just gives you more options as to who can look after you with support. So it doesn't have to be anyone that's registered with the NDIS. The other option is plan managed.
Yep.
And the last option is NDIA managed, which some people go for, because with NDIA managed, then they help to find the supports, any payments that they have to do, NDIA do all that for them. So with self-managing, you have to keep all your receipts, because if you get audited in the future, you have to have all that to show where your funding's gone and if it's been applicable to what it's been given for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in regard to support for managing the plan and finding providers for the funding you've got, it will depend on the person's capacity and whether or not they have people in their life that can support them with that. So if a person has the capacity to find people themselves to provide their supports, then we don't do much more with them other than be here for them to contact. So as an LAC, we touch base with them 4 times a year, but in the meantime, they can contact us if they've got any questions. If the person's requirements are a bit more than that and they don't have the capacity or someone to support them, then they may be allocated what we call support coordination, which is where the NDIS funds for a provider to provide support coordination and coordinate the supports that they need for them.
So who decides that? Whose decision is that with how much support?
It's usually written into the plan. So when we have our meetings with them, we will determine whether or not they feel they have the capacity. Or if they don't have the capacity, do they have a support person who's willing to provide that capacity? And if we decide not, then our recommendation to the NDIA is that they put support coordination in place. But that's just a recommendation. It still comes down to the agency making the decision.
Okay. All right. And can carers be supported? So the carer is looking after their loved one. Can they get paid under the NDIS?
They don't get paid. So with the NDIS, no family member can be paid to provide support because family members are our informal supports. And part of the, I guess the push behind NDIS, part of that is to allow families to go back to having ordinary relationships. So rather than a family member providing your care, we prefer to shift it to a professional environment of someone that's professional coming in so that mum can go back to being mum or sister can go back to being sister. So the NDIA will not pay family members to provide the support. That's absolutely out of the question. Yeah.
So does that mean that there's no carers allowance either anymore? So it's just because they're funded, they can get, as you said, someone else to come in and help shower and dress them and do whatever they need to do.
Yeah. Look, as far as the carer payment and Centrelink, that's a whole different government entity, and I can't give you direct answers for that. However, one of the ideas behind the NDIS is that it will free people up to be able to have their life back as well. So if they've been a carer for a long time, you know, there's now the opportunity for them to go on and get back into community participation in some form.
I think it's a great idea because, a lot of people have been stuck caring. Well, not stuck, but they've got no other option but to care for their loved ones rather than actually, be a partner or be a parent or, So I think it's a great idea. Now I can see there's quite a few questions here that a lot of our participants have. So I'm actually going to hand over to Sky to ask you some of the questions as well. Thanks, Guy.
Okay. Hi. So
Hello.
we did have a question come in before from one of our attendees, Jess. Now, she wanted to know with the NDIS, does this cover those that are not Australian citizens?
Okay. I've actually just done a bit of research on that today for that same question. So it does cover people that are not Australian citizens as long as they are residents or they have a special visa. So there's a special permanent visa that they can get, and then that will make them eligible. Or if they are a resident of Australia, they will be eligible.
Okay, fantastic. Now, there is another question that has just come through from Megan Pousty, and she has said her daughter is actually on the NDIS and we are self-managed. However, what she doesn't understand is the contracts they suggest you to make is never clearly have never clearly been explained. Could you shed some light on this situation?
Well, it's a little bit hard to explain without knowing the situation, but usually you'd be linked in with what they call a local area coordinator, who they could call and seek advice as to how to use their plan, how to utilize the price guide.
There's also a really great resource on the NDIS website. There's 3 booklets, booklet 1, 2, and 3. Booklet 3 very clearly outlines what service agreements are, what bookings are, and how to go about setting those up.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. So I believe all the questions that we've had so far. If anybody listening has any further questions, feel free to type them into the chat pod. We were going to hear from one of our students, Tracy. She is just experiencing some technical difficulties at the moment, so she's not available. However, we will cover some questions from her maybe at our next Industry Conversations webinar and get her to shed some light on her employment journey from studying with Australis and how she moved in to her role within the NDIS. Would you have any tips or tricks that you would suggest to anyone that was considering moving into the NDIS or becoming an NDIS provider?
In regards to experience for a job, it's always preferable if you've got some experience within the disability sector before. So maybe if they're trying to get into the sector, maybe try and get some placements in that area to build the skills around that. What do you want to?
Yeah. So with Carers Queensland, with Partner in the Community and LAC, you need a minimum qualification of a Cert 3. But more important, I think, than the qualification is that we need to see that there's some experience. So either lived experience as a person with a disability or who has supported someone with a disability, maybe being a carer. We also need to see that, you have disability experience. So you're not just walking into a job and thinking, oh, yeah, it's just people, that you actually can understand the kind of people that we meet and have the pleasure of sharing time with every day.
Okay, fantastic. Now, we've just had a question that's popped in from Barbara Bryson. Now, she's said a Certificate 3 in what specifically? So from your experience, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so the current qualification at the moment is Certificate 3 in individual support. However, you may have in the past have got Certificate 3 in home care, Certificate 3 in disability, Certificate 3 in community service. Any of those will do. They're not the most current one, but they're still a qualification that shows that you have the capacity for the role.
Fantastic. And do you know of any organisations that you could recommend to people wanting to enter into the NDIS? Any organisations that take on volunteers or that people can volunteer with?
Not really, but look, if people are thinking about becoming a provider, There's a provider toolkit on the website that they can access that gives them all the guidance on how to become a provider. But there's also, look, there's 1,000 and 1,000 upon 1,000 of services out there and new ones developing every single day. So maybe try some of the big companies that have historically provided support for people with disability and see if they can get placement there.
Fantastic. Okay. And what about Certificate 4 qualifications? Would you say that they're popular as well for those considering the move?
Yeah, look, Certificate 3 is your minimum. Anything above that is, of course, a bonus. Get you higher and better chances.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So maybe like your Certificate 4 in community services and your diploma in community services as well?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. Alrighty. Well, I might hand it back over to Wendy and see if she has any other questions for you guys.
Thank you for that. It's a shame that Tracy couldn't join us because being new in the industry would have really shed some light on.
Good.
Yeah, so maybe next time. I can see she's in there, but I think she's having problems actually connecting and communicating. But thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really informative because I have to admit that I didn't know a lot of the things either. You hear so much about the NDIS, but you never hear there's nobody really to answer all the questions. So if somebody did have questions down the line that we haven't covered today, can they just contact Carers Queensland?
Absolutely, yeah. Wendy, there's something I would say that's probably important if people are looking at going into the industry, that they need to understand the permanent significant part for the NDIS. We don't want to give people false hope that they're going to be eligible. So I guess understanding that the permanent means that everything medical that can be done has been done, and this is as good as it's going to get, and for the rest of this person's life. And then the significant, we have to see evidence that this impacts their life in one of the 6 domains. So it's learning, communicating, socializing, self-care,
communication,
decision-making.
Yeah.
So that we have to see that there's significant impact in at least one of those areas in order for them to be eligible.
Yeah.
And that will then carry them through to the rest of their life. Like once they're approved, then it gets reviewed often depending upon what their level of ability, if it changes. Would that be correct?
It's not like previous funding where you have to prove every year that you're eligible.
Okay. Right.
Once you're in, you're in. Each year we will develop a new plan, and prior to developing that plan, we will want to get some reports on what's been happening for you this year, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what would you like to add different next year. But we're not reassessing whether they're eligible. Once they're in, they're in.
Right, okay.
I think a good example of that at the moment is we're working very closely with the special school. So the parents' concerns where, they're still only 14, 15. So if they get the plan now, is that the plan that's going to be with them for the rest of their life? And understandably, the NDIS understands that they are still growing, that, the needs are going to change. And so that the plan changes with them as they progress through their life as well. So a lot of people don't understand that either or are not aware of that. Yeah.
So this may seem a bit of a silly question. If you allocated an amount of money, if you don't use all of your money, does that mean you get less the next year or?
No, it may just be that they've been allocated money for things that perhaps they've not needed, but the reports have come back that perhaps they need funding to be generated for something else instead. Okay. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
It's not like the old system where, you were given a package of $10,000 and every year you'd get $10,000. And this one, every year your plan will be different, and it will be showing where you're at in your life and what your needs are. And there may be sometimes, we've even got people in other states where it's rolled out earlier, who actually put their NDIS on hold for a couple of years because they've achieved what they needed to achieve. And whilst there might be more stuff later they're going to need, right now they're empowered enough not to need that.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's good.
Yeah.
I can just see actually somebody has popped a question here as well. So what happens to someone once they turn 65? Does the funding just stop, or do they get another form of assistance?
No, so if they're on the system before 65, the system can stay with them. Or if somebody comes in after 65, then they go through what they call age care, and they have to have an ACAT assessment.
Right.
Yeah.
So it changes over.
Sorry, I'm just going to add, if you can get on before you're 65, you can keep it as long as your medical needs don't outweigh the needs from your disability.
Okay. Right. And the carers website, Carers at Queensland website, somebody would like. So Mylan, Sky, can you type that into the message for everybody?
Yes, I'm just adding that in for you all now.
Okay, fantastic. I think we've answered all the questions. I have to say it was great to chat with you. It was very informative. And what we'll do is we will have this recorded and we'll send the link out to everybody who would like it. And we'll also put it on our Facebook page as well. Do you have any final words that you wanted to say, Wendy and Emma?
I think for me, the nice thing is that, you've seen families come in that perhaps have always been the sole carer, always been the support work. And now it's just life-changing for these people that are getting the funding, like Wendy said, perhaps they can go back to work. People they're supporting has got the therapies in place that they need. And it's really changing people's lives. And I think it's a really nice thing to be a part of and to help people to achieve that.
Yeah, it is. Just wondering if I can see Tracy is in here, but her camera's not. Oh, Tracy, you're here. Can you hear us?
Oh, that's a shame.
It is a shame. Tracy, try speaking again. No, it looks like she's not able to communicate. Oh, I do have another question. Hopefully she can get her mic working in the meantime. Oh, Sky, I can't, there was a question. Oh, here we go. Somebody is saying that the funding got cut off significant amount because we're in a country town and couldn't provide any assistance. But I'm guessing that may have been early on, because I know that there was a shortage in workers. Would that be correct? Like there was a drastic shortage for anybody with disability experience in Queensland. I think that's coming around now, though. Would you agree?
Yeah, our Rocky office from Rockhampton, they had quite a number of remote families that were unable to get support workers into those areas. And so the NDIS did actually bend some of its rules a bit and did pay some family members for those on those very, very remote properties. However, I do believe that most of those is now gone to professional support workers.
Oh, okay. So really what we need is more care workers out into remote areas where it's needed.
Yeah. Even not just remote areas, even we're based here in Logan Central, and we have a large number of participants that it's taking 3, 4, 5, even 6 months on waiting lists before they can get support workers.
Wow.
Yeah,
so
long time.
If somebody was in the middle of doing their certificate, say they were doing a certificate in community services or a diploma, and they were halfway through their diploma or their certificate, could they work in the industry? As long as they've had that experience in say, for example, volunteering or placement?
Yeah, look, it would depend on the organisation they apply with. A lot of organisations will employ people if you continue your study as well. There is such a shortage at the moment of support workers that if they interviewed well and they felt that they had enough knowledge at this stage, then yes, they potentially could start work straight away.
So there's a lot of job opportunities out there with this as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's great. Tracy, can you, oh, Tracy's just disappeared again. We're not having any luck with Tracy. I can give a little bit of a background with Tracy. She did start doing her her diploma in leisure and health, and then actually did some volunteer work in the sector. And then just towards the end of her diploma, she actually got a position in with Carers Queensland. Sky, do you remember what her position is?
So she didn't go into details with me on what her position was in. She was going to actually tell me about it in this webinar. But yeah, I believe she was starting out a fresh role with Carers Queensland.
Great.
Yeah,
That's good.
So there's lots of opportunity. Okay, one last question. Do you have a list of NDIS providers in regional areas? Is that on your website, or can...
Is it on the website?
So for each person that gets a plan, they will be given a unique code to access a portal. So they will have their own online portal, and in that portal, they can find whatever particular support person or worker or item that they have been funded for. They can find a list of them. There is a list of all providers in Queensland, but it's a spreadsheet that's about 1,000 pages long.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. And we have to be seen as completely impartial, which we are. So we can't actually recommend any particular providers to any participant. All we can do is guide them to the list for them to make their way through themselves.
Right, okay. And I just had another question. Is the diploma of leisure and health suitable? Well, obviously it is, because Tracy's got that job there as well after doing her diploma. And, you know, most diplomas and certificates these days, you learn about people with disabilities, how to empower people, how to keep healthy. So you've got all of that. And every role in under the NDIS, it wouldn't be just specifically personal care. There'd be companionship. There'd be so many other roles that you've mentioned. So it's not just do Cert 3 in individual support because you're going to be a personal carer. You could be taking somebody out shopping or helping them with their housework, like household duties. That would all be covered.
Yeah.
Or you might just be mowing their lawn or cleaning out their gutters.
Yep. Yeah, so there's so many different things, so many different jobs. So and nobody else is typing anymore. So I think we've actually, can you see, Sky, if we've covered all the questions?
Yes, we have covered all the questions. What we might do with Tracy, we might put together an article and put it on our Facebook page. So if anybody wants to read up on Tracy, we'll probably have that up by the end of the week. So if you are watching and you want to learn about her story, jump onto our Facebook page and have a bit of a read through. We'll get that up for you guys.
Fantastic.
Great.
And thanks again, Emma and Wendy and Sky for today. It was fantastic. All right. Okay, well, have a great night. I'm just going to stop recording now.
And you. Bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.